I've been saying for a long time that by May, and we're almost through May, we'd have a pretty good sense of which direction the country was going to go, whether Trump was going to be able to solidify his control over the country or whether protesters against him were in fact going to run the tables. And, I think to me that seems pretty clear at this point, but that's not to say we're out of the woods. And one of the examples that I will use for the fact that Trump is apparently losing grip, at least over the American voters, is what just happened in South Carolina, where the legislators said they would not redistrict the state of South Carolina in order to get more seats for the Republicans. And that's interesting on two ways. It's interesting, one, because Trump had demanded it and they are now refusing. These are Republican legislators, but also because South Carolina is already so profoundly gerrymandered that they were afraid that they would start to lose seats that they've already cut out for the Republicans because they're expecting so many people to turn out who are so unhappy about Trump. And we need to be clear here. This is not about Democrats versus Republicans at this point. This is those people who care about democracy, whether you're a Democrat, an independent, or a Republican, a traditional Republican, standing up against MAGA, which is trying to destroy our country. So in that case, the numbers of people who are siding against Trump is getting higher by the day. His job approval numbers are at best in the mid 30s, and that's not a really good number. And as for his approval of the economy, that's between 32 and 33%, which means that 2 out of every 3 people in this country disapprove of the way he is handling the economy. And of course, that was supposed to be one of his strong suits, the strong suit that got him elected in 2024. So you can look at that South Carolina thing. But I thought if you would because you asked so many questions about it, I would talk about 2 other major things that are currently on the table. And I'll try and do it quickly because it is nice outside and I would love to get out on the water. But, and because these seem to have gone on longer than they probably should in the past. So I want to start here with Iran, what's happening in Iran. And I don't think that this is, there's any way to spin what's happened in Iran as a good thing for the United States of America. Now, a number of Republicans, including people like Senator Wicker from Mississippi, who is the chair of the Senate Armed Services Committee, have tried to argue that by knocking out a lot of Iran's traditional navy, for example, that Trump has done something to weaken Iran. That is it's possible, I suppose. But in this moment, when what we're seeing is the real rise of drone warfare and what the drones can do in the Strait of Hormuz, I'm not sure that still holds anymore. But one of the ways to think about Iran is, and what's happening with Iran, is that, Trump made the decision on February 28th to go into Iran, and he expected, along with Israel and the Prime Minister of Israel, Benjamin Netanyahu, to do a quick strike on Iran and get out. And he thought it would look something apparently like his strikes on Venezuela, which gave him a lot of say over Venezuelan oil and put in place there an administration that was much more amenable to working with the United States than the previous one, even though it's the same political party. It's a different leader. And, there's been no regime change there. He just got somebody who was willing to work with him. And it looked pretty much like that's what he was trying to do in Iran. We've heard that there were attempts to put a certain person in control of Iran, and that went bad from the beginning. But the bottom line is that didn't happen. That is, Israel and the United States went in guns a-blazing, and what happened was that the regime in Iran stayed in place with different leaders, younger leaders, and they exercised power over the Strait of Hormuz. They took control of the Strait of Hormuz because they are able to do that thanks to things like mines in the strait and thanks to drone warfare, and also just the threat of those things because, of course, oil tankers going through the Strait of Hormuz are flammable, right? And so what we have had really since that happened was, as Josh Marshall of Talking Points Memo said the other day, just it was a loss from then, and that Trump really ought to take the L and move on. But he can't begin to accept the idea he